What's going on, everybody? Cleepus Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be comparing the Samsung Galaxy A13 to the Visible Midnight. So let's get started. So with the Samsung Galaxy A13, we're getting a 6.6-inch PLS LCD display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 400, and an aspect ratio of 20:9. With the Visible Midnight, we're getting a 6.52-inch LCD display with a resolution of 720p, a PPI of 269, and an aspect ratio of 20:9. So these displays are pretty similar, but I would say in pretty much every way, the Samsung Galaxy A13 does have a much better quality display. With the 1080p resolution, we get a sharper, crisper image, whereas the Visible Midnight only has 720p, which isn't really bad, but at the same time, it does make a huge difference all the same. In addition to this, the Samsung Galaxy A13 is much brighter, as you can see from the viewing angles here, and the A13 does have bolder and more vibrant colors as well. So if you're consuming a lot of content, whether you're watching videos, looking at photos, or maybe you're playing games or even reading, you're gonna get a much better experience with the Samsung Galaxy A13. Now for storage, the Samsung Galaxy A13 has 64GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and with the Visible Midnight, we're getting 32GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion as well. So this is actually a pretty big difference here. On one hand, with the Visible Midnight, unless you're just really lightly using your phone, 32GB even with microSD card expansion is probably not going to be enough, because if you have a bunch of apps and stuff like that, you're probably going to want to keep that on the phone itself, and 32GB does fill up pretty fast. On the other hand, for the average user with 64GB on the A13, you're probably going to be fine. 64GB is much harder to go through, and unless you have something like 50GB worth of apps, you're probably not going to need any more than this. So in general, for most people, as far as storage goes, I do think the A13 is going to be the better choice. Now there's no wireless charging with the Samsung Galaxy A13, but surprisingly, the Visible Midnight does have wireless charging. I'm not sure about the wattage, I think it's 10 watts, but it does work really well. So that's definitely a nice feature to have, and for a phone in such an entry-level price range, I was actually really surprised to see it on the Visible Midnight. Now, is wireless charging really going to change your entire experience? Probably not, but at the same time it doesn't hurt, and I will say wireless charging is definitely a really useful feature for cable management. Now for security features, both of these phones do have fingerprint scanners right here on the power keys, and in addition to the fingerprint scanners, both of these phones do have Face Unlock, so we get two different options to get into them. But starting with the Samsung Galaxy A13, let's go ahead and give these fingerprint scanners a try and see how well they work. There we go, one more time. And there we go, real fast and responsive, no issues here. Moving on to the Visible Midnight. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, both fingerprint scanners are real fast and responsive, no issues at all, they work really well, and remember, if you'd prefer to use Face Unlock, you can with either of these phones. Now taking a look at the camera setups here, with the Samsung Galaxy A13, we got a water drop notch for the front-facing camera, pretty basic design, and this camera is 8 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a quad camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra-wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. With the Visible Midnight, we got a water drop notch for the front-facing camera as well, and this camera is also 8 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 13 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra-wide camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So overall, both phones do have pretty good camera setups with a decent amount of features, and I do appreciate that the Visible Midnight does have an ultra-wide camera even though it doesn't have a macro camera. But that being said, the Samsung Galaxy A13 has both an ultra-wide camera and a macro camera, and in addition to that, the pictures this phone takes are much better quality, so if you're taking lots of photos, you want a wide variety of features, and you want the best quality you can get, the Samsung Galaxy A13 is definitely going to be the way to go here. But that being said, if you're a more casual camera user and you just want to get a few nice photos here and there, maybe for social media or something like that, then the Visible Midnight will get the job done. For video, both of these phones can shoot in 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, and the video quality in general isn't really that impressive. So if you do want to shoot nicer videos with your phone, I would suggest looking at a higher end device that can take better videos, like for example the Samsung Galaxy A32 5G. Now internally, with the Samsung Galaxy A13, we're getting 4GB of RAM with the Samsung Exynos 850 processor. With the Visible Midnight, we're getting 3GB of RAM with the MediaTek Helio P22 processor. I ran Geekbench 5 benchmark tests on both of these phones, And with the Samsung Galaxy A13, we're getting a single core score of 157 and a multi-core score of 588. With the Visible Midnight, we're getting a single core score of 147 and a multi-core score of 820. So in general, neither of these phones are particularly fast. They're more going to be meant for basic activities like sending text messages, making calls, some really light web browsing and social media use, and then streaming videos. But I would say between the two, the Visible Midnight is going to be noticeably faster, and you will see a significant difference in performance. So if you're going to be on your phone a moderate amount, I would say because of the processing power, the Visible Midnight is probably going to be a better option. But for really light use, maybe just occasional web browsing and social media use. But other than that, just more basic things like streaming videos on YouTube, sending text messages, making calls, stuff like that, the Samsung Galaxy A13 should still be okay. But again, keep in mind, neither of these phones are very powerful, and they're not really meant for heavy use or higher end activities. Now for the battery, the Samsung Galaxy A13 has a 5000 mAh battery that supports 15 watt fast charging, and the Visible Midnight has a 4000 mAh battery that supports 10 watt fast charging. So clearly, the Samsung Galaxy A13 does have an advantage here. Maybe not a huge night and day type of difference, but you're definitely going to get much more life with the A13 than you will with the Visible Midnight. And down the road, as the battery degrades, which all of them do, with the Samsung Galaxy A13, you're not going to notice it nearly as quickly, since you're already going to be starting out with more battery life than you need. It's just not going to affect you nearly as soon. So if you want to get one phone and keep it for a long period of time without having to replace it, the Samsung Galaxy A13, because it has a much larger battery, is probably going to be a better option. Now for the fast charging, with the difference between 10 and 15 watts, it's really not that much of a difference, but I will say both of these phones do charge up pretty fast, so that's great if you're in a hurry. Another thing to keep in mind is that with the A13, we do get NFC, but the Visible Midnight does not have NFC, so if you want to use contactless mobile payment services like Google Pay, unfortunately you can't with the Visible Midnight, but you can with the Samsung Galaxy A13. So definitely keep this in mind. I personally use tap and pay features all the time. It's definitely a nice feature to have, but at the same time, it's not really for everyone. So if you don't use that feature and you don't care about it, obviously you're not going to care if a phone has NFC or not, but if you do use those features, again, keep in mind that between the two, the Samsung Galaxy A13 is the only phone that actually has NFC. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? In general, most of the advantages are going to go to the Samsung Galaxy A13. The A13 has a much better display, both in size and quality. It also has double the storage, a better camera setup that has more features and better photo quality, a larger battery, and NFC as well. But on the other hand, with the Visible Midnight, we're getting significantly more processing power, and this phone does have wireless charging. So in general, if you're only lightly using your phone, just doing the basics like sending text messages, making calls, watching a few videos here and there, and some occasional web browsing and social media use, the Samsung Galaxy A13 is probably going to be your best bet because it has a better quality display and for the most part better features as well. But if you're going to be on your phone a little bit more, then the Visible Midnight is probably a better option because even though it is lacking in some areas as far as features go, it has a significantly more powerful processor. So if you're on your phone more, having more processing power is definitely going to give you a better experience, and that kind of outweighs the other advantages the A13 has. But this concludes my comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A13 and the Visible Midnight. If you want to learn more about either of these phones individually, be sure to check out my full reviews and tips and tricks videos for them on the channel. But I hope you enjoyed this comparison, and I hope you found the information useful as well. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. But as always, I will see you in the next video.